That Saturday evening, November 28, 2009, at around 6 p.m., Craig drives to Karen's grandmother's house. With a semi-automatic rifle in hand, he enters the house without warning.
We knew about Grandma and Karen and one girl. There was no report of a second girl going to the hospital because she was already dead. They didn't take her to the hospital. She was just on the floor. But I called their cell phones because I didn't know which girl it was, because I thought the other one maybe got away. I said, "This is your Aunt Lynn. Call me, I know you're scared, but call me." Now I was thinking about my nephew and where was he? And I called the Kaler house. I said, "Where is my nephew?" And they couldn't figure out why I was calling and why I was looking for him. And I told him at that point, I said, "Your son shot my sister."
Craig shoots his ex-wife, Karen Kaler, her grandmother, Dorothy White, and his two daughters, Emily, 19, and Lauren, 16. He shoots 7 times, and all 7 shots reach his 4 intended targets. They are all killed, except for Karen's grandmother, who dies 4 days later at the hospital. After a frantic search, their son Sean is finally found at a neighbor's house.
He had run away barefoot and coatless to the neighbors to call 911. He was in their custody, protective custody.
Even more frightening, Craig has disappeared, and nobody knows what he'll do next.
He was pretty mad at me. He was pretty mad at Sonny. We didn't know if he was going on to do some more harm.
After an intensive 13-hour manhunt, Craig Kaler is finally found, wandering on the side of a road, and is picked up by the Kansas Bureau of Investigation. Journalist Sangeeta Shastri covers the Kaler story.
Kaler was a bit disoriented and had scratches on his hands and was a bit dirty. And the deputy asked Kaler what he was doing, if he was all right, and Kaler told him, "I'm the man you're looking for." When the police detective asked him questions about the night before, he told the detective, "I can't believe how fast you can lose everything."
Family, friends, and neighbors are devastated.
It was complete disbelief. You see shows on TV all the time about things that happen. You see things like this on the news, but you always think, "Oh, that's terrible," but then go on your merry way. You never think that's something that's gonna happen to you or someone you know or someone you're close with.
I thought I knew Craig very well, and I thought he was a loving husband and father, and I thought he was the perfect man, and it was just total shock.
I can't understand it. There's no way to understand it. It doesn't make any sense. Because he's so logical and so rational. I don't know. I can't understand it.
My dad knew that Craig hunted and was a good shot and had a gun collection. And my dad more than once told me, he said, "You know what? He's gonna hurt those girls. He is gonna hurt them.
No one knows what Craig will do next.
The first week of December, I received a phone call, and it was Craig on the other end of that phone. He called my home from jail. He did sound very normal, and it took all I had not to blast him verbally, but I didn't really quite know what to say. He sounded like himself, and he asked if I was still working, and he thanked me for taking care of his son, and that's basically all he had to say.
Craig was an illusionist. He liked to create an image that was positive, make it look like everything was okay. He would get them on the phone and act like nothing had happened and try to make small talk. It was his way of trying to bring back some of the image and illusion that he had once created.
Or the psychopathic interpretation would be that he was trying to create witnesses who could say, "He called me afterwards and he seemed completely normal. He must have gone crazy a few minutes before when he did it."
Did Craig really go insane, or was this premeditated murder? Craig's future, in fact his very life, depends on the answer.
The jury returned to the room after 2 hours, and Craig Kaler was simply staring ahead and did not have an expression on his face.
The small town of Burlingame, Kansas, is gearing up for their largest court case ever. The murders have stunned the tiny, close-knit community.
I got a sense of deep sadness and confusion as to what had happened and why it had happened.
In December 2010, Craig Kaler has his preliminary trial. He enters a plea of insanity, his only defense against the capital punishment charge. Whether or not he carried out the crime is not in question. The question is, was he insane when he did it? Friends and family notice Craig's unusual behavior during the trial.
Given the opportunity to speak to me, Craig would. Just silly things, he would say. It sure is a beautiful sunny day. I don't know if he was trying to use it as a double meaning, using Sonny's name in a comment to me, or I don't know.
It was awful. As he walked by, he did speak to my husband, asked him how he was doing, which was odd.
It was strange to me to see him, you know, I would think that he would just sit over there with his head down and, you know, just kind of go through the motions of the sentencing, but he would just, even the remarks he'd make to his ex-sister-in-law and things like that, he just really acted like nothing had happened.
Everyone has an opinion about Craig's plea of insanity.
I think he was very calculated. I don't think he's lost it. He's just, the facade of the perfect family is gone, so he doesn't have to pretend anymore. So, he is not pretending. This is who he is.
And it was probably always there. His eyes had always been cold. I didn't know him that well, other than my friend's husband, and I trusted him with my kids, but it was calculated. He knew what he was going to do, and he did it.
Well, something obviously had to happen because a man doesn't kill his kids. I mean, was he out of his mind? Well, I'd say technically yes, because you don't kill, period. You don't kill people, and you don't kill your ex-wife, or and you certainly don't kill your kids. So yeah, I guess technically he was crazy, because no sane person would do that.
Can the defense prove that Craig had gone insane and save him from death row?
Defense attorney Tom Haney said that this was a tragedy, that it was something that shouldn't happen to any family, and that no person in their right mind could do such a thing. And that was really the core, I think, of the defense's argument, was that Craig Kaler was not in his right mind when he shot and killed 4 of his family members.
They claim that Karen's lesbian affair pushed him to his breaking point.
The defense was, I think, trying to paint a picture of Sunny Reese as a homewrecker. They were trying to paint her as someone who was introduced to the Kalers and who met Karen Kaler and then caused a rift in Karen and Craig Kaler's marriage.
The defense cites the breakup of his marriage and the loss of his job as causing severe depression, which was left untreated. They point out that officers found a full bottle of antidepressant pills in Craig's car, prescribed a couple of months prior to the crime.
They found a bottle of clonazepam pills, which I believe are anti-anxiety medication. There were 30 pills and he hadn't taken any of them, and they'd been prescribed to him earlier, and so they were found in his vehicle.
The defense also argues the fact that he did not attempt to cover up the crime as a clear indicator that it was not premeditated. The defense attorney, Tom Haney, argues that everyone has a different breaking point.
Tom Haney pulled out a pencil and he snapped it in half to show the extent to which Craig Kaler had lost control over his mental and emotional stability.
In this case, his mental state was the best argument they had, and he certainly had enough in his history to make most jurors probably sit back and take a deep breath and think about how they might have reacted had their spouse engaged in the same actions that Karen had engaged in and had their lives fallen apart the way that his did. Craig's best piece of evidence of his insanity is also one of the most frightening things about this case, and it's the fact that he killed his own children. There are jurors out there who do believe that no sane parent could pull the trigger and shoot his own children.
It's uncertain whether the defense's argument that he snapped will be enough to save Craig from death row.
In order to be criminally insane, a person has to have had no conscious awareness of what is happening in that moment. They aren't aware of driving up to the house, they aren't aware of grabbing the gun, and they aren't aware of shooting.
The prosecution counters that the defendant knew exactly what he was doing. They describe Craig as a hunter, consciously planning to use the weapons in the house for a singular purpose: to eliminate his problems. The prosecution points to other clear and damaging evidence of Craig's planning.
There was a lot of equipment in the car, in his Explorer. They found camping equipment, among other things. They found trail mix, there were maps in the car, they found a suitcase with money, and so the prosecuting attorneys used this as a sign that Craig Kaler had planned out what he was going to do after he committed this crime and that he had planned the crime itself.
The prosecution presents some disturbing evidence. They claim that blood trails in the house indicate that Craig Kaler tracked his targets in White's home with a semi-automatic rifle and moved room to room as if it were a hunt.
He shot Karen and made her lay there on the floor and watch him chase the girls down and kill them. He made sure that she sat there and she could not move. He shot her in the back so she was paralyzed and could not move. He planned it exactly, and he made her lay there and listen to him kill those girls.
Craig shot 7 times and did not miss a target.
I mean, Craig didn't miss. If he had lost control of his decision-making and all of this, he would have missed his targets. There were 4 people in the house. He made 7 shots and didn't miss. There were no stray bullets. He had a long drive between his parents' house and my grandmother's house. That was a long time to sit and think. You don't just lose it and sit on it in that amount of time, and he had to decide to drive there.
In my opinion, he let Sean go. If he'd wanted to kill Sean, Sean had been dead, and he was not out of his mind. If he was out of his mind, he'd have shot Sean.
The prosecution conclude their arguments with the dramatic statement that Craig didn't snap, that he was in control.
What we see is that he loaded his car with guns and ammunition. He drives an hour to the house where he knew they were living. He shot everyone but his son, and then after the crime, he said, "Oh no, I messed up." Those, to me, are all signs of somebody who was lucid and aware of what they were doing.
Craig's fate now lies in the hands of the jury. Are they convinced that he's a regular American guy who lost his mind? Or is he a cold-blooded murderer?
The jury returned to the room after 2 hours, and when they returned and each stood and gave their decision, Craig Kaler was simply staring ahead and did not have an expression on his face.
On August 25, 2011, the jury rejects the insanity plea and returns a guilty verdict of capital murder.
Court sentences the defendant for the crime of capital murder to death.
On October 11, 2011, the judge formally sentences Craig to death by lethal injection. An appeal is filed automatically after the sentence. No matter what, Craig Kaler will never go free again. On September 21st, Chatham police get an urgent call. There's been a stabbing at the couple's new address. Only this time, Angelo's in trouble.
He was laying on the front step when the police arrived.
Elizabeth tells police a burglar broke in. Angelo went to the door and was attacked. With Angelo in critical condition, Elizabeth braces for the worst. Angelo Headington is stabbed in the early morning hours of September 21st, 2002. He's rushed to the hospital.
I kept saying to Ange that he'll be okay, everything will be okay. And then, as I was being pulled away, I heard Ange say, "It was my wife." I had Ange's blood all over me. They wouldn't let me wash.
Elizabeth is taken into custody for further interrogation. The next day, the police tell Elizabeth that her husband has just been pronounced dead.
It had said that Ange had passed away. And that I was officially charged with first-degree murder.
What the detective says next is even more shocking. He tells her the name of her deceased husband is not Angelo.
The detective referred to Angelo as Angela. And I kept saying, no, his name is Angelo. And he asked me if I understood exactly what was going on. Ange was a girl.
The paramedics made an observation which led them to believe that the person who they believed was a male person was in fact a female person.
On their way to the hospital, the paramedics discovered a prosthetic penis under Angelo's clothes.
The police came to the door and said, "We have to talk to you. It's about your daughter." And there's something else, like, he is not a he, he's a she.
The story is everywhere, and Angelo's secret is the talk of the town.
How do you keep something like that quiet?
My son showed me the newspaper. I said, no, it cannot be.
People were quite shocked to find out that Angelo was a woman.
Not everyone is surprised, though. Horse dealer Nelson Billier says years before, he first knew Angelo as Angela.
Bunch of us were sitting around drinking beer, And she wandered up. And you can imagine guy's about half drunk. And this thing walks up and lets on to us it's a guy. She was dressed like a guy, she acted like a guy, but she had earrings on. And I said to her, why would you wear earrings like that to the Western Fair? And she says, I am a girl.
Nelson had tried to tell people about Angelo, but nobody believed him.
And I told Kelly, I said, you realize those are two girls.
I'm thinking, well, she's pregnant. There's no way. That's obviously a man.
Police struggle to understand how Elizabeth could have had an intimate relationship without knowing Angelo's biological sex. Elizabeth tells them what Angelo told her.
An ex-girlfriend got mad at him and burnt his genitals. And that's why he wasn't as a normal male. I never seen nothing. Things were dark. I never passed judgment. There's more to love than just sex. I thought I was in love.
I think it's completely possible that Elizabeth believed Angelo's story and then decided to respect his wishes and not touch him physically, because Elizabeth was so passive when it came to him. He had so much control over her that it would make sense that he had control in the world, he would have control in the bedroom as well.
In custody, Elizabeth quickly admits to killing Angelo. But she says she acted in self-defense.
It's like everybody else, if you're pushed to the limit, people protect themselves.
Her account of her 7-month relationship with Angelo is harrowing. The beatings began within a week of moving in with him.
I took one heck of a beating.
Soon, Angelo punishes Elizabeth for offenses such as making her meal portions too large.
Well, I tried to make it as even as possible, so then he would start taking food off my plate. Well, you're trying to lose weight, so you don't need all this food. The more I tried to fight back, the harder the beatings got, the more creative he got.
Elizabeth reveals the real reason she asked her brother to take her guns away. She feared for her life.
He had cocked the gun and pointed it right at my head and said, "Do you want me to pull the trigger and see if there's something in there?" As I'm looking down the barrel of my own gun.
And when she was hospitalized, she didn't fall on the saddle horn. She was violated with a metal pipe.
I was actually very shocked when Ange had put me in the truck to take me to the hospital. I figured I was just gonna be thrown in a ditch somewhere on the side of the road.
Police don't yet know if Elizabeth's claims are true, but it's clear the young woman is in rough shape.
There was a lot of physical features about her that supported the fact that she was being abused.
Elizabeth spends her 27th birthday in custody in Sarnia Prison. Dr. Peter G. Jaffe, an expert on domestic abuse, is brought in by Elizabeth's lawyer to assess her mental state.
I think what was unique about Elizabeth is the fact that she wasn't thinking about herself and whether she'd spent her life in jail. Her thinking was really all about Angelo and Angelo's family and what she had done.
In their sessions, Elizabeth reveals another truth to Dr. Jaffe. She isn't legally married.
It was very hard lying to my family. That was the biggest thing that hurt so much, because I have always been a very honest person.
She was never pregnant either.
I knew right off the bat that it was a bad thing to lie and say I was pregnant, and it hurt me more than people realize. But I also tried to let them know that I was doing what I needed to do at that time.
The stories are difficult for Angelo's family to hear. Journalist Jennifer O'Brien interviews his mother, Marlene Headington, at length.
Marlene wanted people to know that Angelo wasn't always a monster and wasn't just evil to the core kind of thing. She was a tomboy, but a happy kid. Marlene said, you know, Angelo would be the first person to help you out of a ditch if you were stuck in a ditch.
But according to Marlene Headington, everything changed when Angela turned 14. She dropped out of school, found work as a farmhand, dressed as a guy, and answered only to Angelo.
She started saying, I am a boy, and this is a man's world, and I'm a man, I'm not a girl, I don't want to be a girl.
Could Angelo's behavior result from the traumatic experience of growing up as a trans person?
Gender dysphoria does not entitle you to defraud another person, to be dishonest with another person, to basically use another person to help you resolve your issue.
In a relationship, honesty is literally the foundation of success. And so the fact that he wasn't able to tell her the truth tells me that there may be other reasons and other things that weren't real about him.
Elizabeth Rudavsky is in custody after stabbing her partner, Angelo Headington. After his death, police learn Angelo is really Angela, a woman living as a man. The court proceeding in April 2003 is only a day long.
There had been murders and there had been abuse cases, but nothing like this. I'm thinking, this is a movie.
For the first time, the public learns how Angelo was really killed. It starts when Angelo threatens the life of Elizabeth's 8-year-old niece.
We had a bit of an episode where he just argued with me, and we just argued back and forth. I was finally standing up for myself and telling him that I've had enough. I can't take this no more. I'm done. I just want out. He said that he would have my niece's head brought to me on a platter in the morning. And I was very confused on why he would harm a defenseless child in all this, that she had nothing to do with this. Just leave her alone. And he said no. He says to me, well, I think I'm gonna kill you and deal with your body in the morning. And then all of a sudden, he attacked me and started coming at me. Started grabbing me by the throat. I fought back.
She manages, for the first time, to escape. But Angelo catches up before Elizabeth can break free.
I don't remember doing any of this. It was like I was watching a movie. I just remember him saying, "You stabbed me."
Police say the evidence supports Elizabeth's version of events and her allegations of abuse.
We seized a vacuum cleaner pipe. There was DNA that we were able to extract from that pipe that supported allegations that Elizabeth had made.
I told the truth. It felt so good to finally get it out.
The court also hears a summary of Dr. Jaffe's report on her psychological state and why she couldn't leave Angelo.
Most people think, well, I could never be in that situation. Give me, show me a crack in the door, I'm out of there so fast. But that's not the reality. Part of abuse is taking somebody down a very dark highway. So if an abuser gets a victim to tell one lie, then you're part of the scam. Then you feel even more trapped.
Elizabeth says her mental state also kept her from asking questions about Angelo's sexuality.
I'm not naive. I guess deep down I did know Angelo was an Angela. When you're put in certain circumstances and you're told and forced to believe certain things, your mind goes into a defense mode. You just learn to overlook people's flaws You just learn to take things in stride, go with the flow, don't ask questions. People are who they are.
Defense mechanisms are very powerful things. You can truly convince yourself that what you think you're seeing, you're not. But I also think it might have been embarrassing for her. She might not want to have admitted that she maybe made a mistake and believed that Angelo was a man when he was genetically a woman.
I think Elizabeth probably loved Angelo, at least at the beginning. And it's hard to really know if Angelo loved Elizabeth as a person or loved the representation that Elizabeth provided of what Angelo wanted to be.
I don't think that Angelo is just a mean, evil person. I think that Angelo is deeply disturbed and doesn't know how to deal with his emotions, and he acts out because of it.
I'm not one to call people's bluffs. Do you want to play Russian roulette with your family's lives? I didn't want to.
I don't think it was wrong that Elizabeth stabbed him. At the time of the stabbing, Elizabeth feared for her life.
I think Elizabeth is very lucky to be alive today. Who knows what Angelo might have done had she not killed him.
The judge, Crown prosecutors, and police investigators agree Elizabeth Rudavsky acted in self-defense when she killed Angelo Headington.
The only difference between women who kill and women who don't is the severity of the abuse that somebody's facing. The more severe the abuse, the more sexual abuse, the more threats to somebody's life, the more likely somebody is to kill ultimately in self-defense.
The murder charge against Elizabeth is dropped.
Marlene was quite emotional about it and very remorseful. She was remorseful, I think, over being unable to help her daughter. And also she was remorseful and regretful over not helping Elizabeth. She had said to me, you know, she killed my daughter, but what other choice did she have?
10 years after these events, Elizabeth lives a normal life and has advice for other victims of domestic abuse.
As much as you think you're alone, you're not. It takes you to step up and say something if you're in danger.
I'm really glad that Elizabeth decided to tell her story because I believe that she has been through a traumatic experience. And so it's my belief that her sharing what she went through is actually part of the process of getting better and not going through something like that again.
Obviously, one of the messages from what Elizabeth went through, it's a message to friends, family, neighbors, even co-workers that victims need people to keep asking questions, to be supportive.
You know, I'm really feel bad about it that I did not see it coming with Elizabeth, what was going through.
I think I just felt so guilty about not being able to help her.
In 2007, Elizabeth gets married. Sadly, her husband Mike dies of a heart attack shortly after the birth of their son, Luke.
Luke is part of Mike. That's what she's living for.
She just lived for that little kid, you know?
I don't know how she can be so strong.
I always question, why did I make it through this? I believe it was for Mike and Luke. Don't get these tears wrong, I'm happy.
When Karen gets back from meeting her new boyfriend, she runs into Chris on the street. And Chris convinces her to come over to his house.
John texted missing you already, J. And he just put the initial J. Karen was up in the bathroom and he picked it up and read it. And I think that was the start. I think that's what's done it, if you like.
He went into the bathroom and then tried to strangle her with a towel. And he then armed himself with a hammer, which was close by and battered her about the head. I think he broke the hammer, and having done that, went and got another hammer from another part of the house.
After Chris brutally murders his wife Karen, he sends a text message to John saying, "Meeting Karen in Cardiff was the worst thing you ever did." Chris cleans up the crime scene after first going out to buy a bottle of whiskey, leaving the body in the house.
He'd gone to the shop and bought a bottle of whiskey because it was on camera. And then Chris went back to the house and cleaning up everything.
With the house clean, Chris roams the streets, claiming to be looking for Karen.
Killed her about, I think it was 5:30. And he was ringing my nan then to see if he'd seen her, when he was probably stood next to her.
Chris ends his search charade at his in-laws' house and spends the entire night drinking with her and talking about his marriage and his relationship to Karen. Towards early morning, he confesses to Mo that he's killed Karen. Karen's family cannot believe what's happened.
It's like as though you're outside your body watching. It doesn't seem like you. It's really, really strange. I can't describe how I felt. Obviously, I was devastated. I don't mean it like that. But what I was doing and saying and things like this, I can't. It's quite blurred, the day.
I just couldn't believe it. I lost her. And it still hurts.
I wouldn't believe it for about 2 weeks. Like, I kept looking for her. And then after the funeral, then I spent the night in the cemetery by the side of her. That's when I finally accepted it.
After confessing the murder to Mo, Chris disappears. There are various sightings of him around town.
And he was down the bingo hall looking for her when he just killed her.
The police search the streets urgently, looking for the confessed killer. No one knows what else he's capable of.
It was awful. Worst day of my life. Worst day.
At 9:08 a.m. on June 23, 2002, Karen Pugh is found dead, killed by 16 blows to the head. After confessing to the crime, her husband Chris is now nowhere to be found. Karen's family fears the worst. They are also afraid of what they might do to him if he does resurface.
I wanted to kill him. Stone dead. That's what I said.
Over the next several hours, the rumors about Chris's whereabouts run rampant, and many believe he'll resort to suicide.
If I'd known he had drugs in his pocket and he was down the dock, I'd have pushed him in.
With every passing minute, the family becomes increasingly anxious. Chris is still nowhere to be found. But by 3:30 p.m., to everyone's surprise, Chris appears at the police station and unexpectedly turns himself in. He tells police that he believes he has committed a crime, but has no recollection of the event. He is detained while police sort out his bizarre story.
I just know that Chris gave himself up. Eventually. It was awful. Worst day of my life. Worst day.
The next morning, the family is asked to identify Karen's body at the morgue.
Me and my brother, Michael, and my nan, we were all in the car to go and see my mum after she was murdered. We went to the hospital morgue. They covered up her head with a bandage. So I always remember she had a little tear in her eye.
By bizarre coincidence, Chris calls while they are there.
They'd just come out of seeing their mother dead. And I think it was Michael's phone that rang. And he spoke to him like as though they'd been shopping. And they were just on their way home from shopping.
Just 2 days after turning himself in, on June 25, 2003, Chris is charged with the murder of Karen Pugh and remanded into custody. Several months later, Deanne visits her father in prison.
I just wanted answers, like, I wanted to know why he did it. I wanted him to say sorry more than anything, I think. I didn't get any of that. He was just talking to me like it was something you do every day, or when I killed your mother. That's how he was talking to me, when I killed your mother, like it's just something you do every day.
On April 30th, 2003, just 11 months after Karen's death, Chris begins his trial for the murder of his wife. To Karen's family and the prosecution team, it seems like an open and shut case. They are wrong.
The charge was a simple charge of murder. It would appear on the charge sheet, given the date, on a certain date, Christopher Pugh murdered Karen Pugh, and that would be it. In English law, murder is murder. There are no degrees of murder.
When the trial started, or just, as it was starting, the prosecution, we were not led to believe that there would be any problems. The evidence was quite straightforward. Chris had tried to strangle Karen, couldn't for whatever reasons, and went and got 2 hammers to make sure that she never got up again. And for that split second, I feel that he's thought about what he's going to do, so it's premeditated.
Efforts to clean up the crime scene afterwards, efforts to elude the police, at least for a while, all indicate that there was a consciousness of guilt. And the fact that he switched instruments in the course of the crime indicate that he was thinking, he was making decisions even during the crime.
The prosecution argues that he was lucid during the attack.
The fact that he used 2 hammers is pretty conclusive usually in circumstances such as this, that you're not out of control. You're acting in a controlled and rational manner. To put down 1 hammer which was broken and then go and search for another and then come back and finish the act is pretty well deliberate. I think we thought we were home and dry on this case.
He found or got them 2 hammers and he killed her. He beat her 16 times on the head.
However, the defense creates a challenge for the prosecution by citing a little-known statute called the provocation law.
The important feature in this case was the law of provocation. And that provided that if by words or deeds immediately prior to the incident, someone was caused to lose his self-control and acted in a particular manner, then the proper verdict is one of not guilty of murder, but guilty of manslaughter.
In short, the defense is claiming that Karen's actions provoked Chris into killing her. This is a law more often used in domestic abuse cases where the victim kills the batterer.
The core of the philosophical debate about provocation is whether or not there can be circumstances under which an otherwise rational person is so upset that he or she can no longer be expected to respond rationally.
Most of us have heard the expression, "I saw red." And that leads us to believe that what the person is saying was, "I really lost it." But the people that lose it remember their actions. And so I do think it's possible that Chris lost it, that he got angry, that he saw red, but that doesn't mean that he would have forgotten what he did.
Chris's, I suppose, lawyers were looking for was to blame Karen, that Karen was the Scarlet Woman and Karen had broken the family home up.
There was some evidence raised by the defense that Karen had still returned to the matrimonial home from time to time, but it's quite clear that she still had feelings for him despite his conduct towards her, so that when he was able to persuade her to go back, she was very susceptible to be persuaded. Of course, it did result in the fact that she was sleeping with both at the same time.
But the prosecution remains confident that John's testimony will clear up any confusion about the state of Chris and Karen's abusive marriage. They're in for a big surprise. John chooses to testify from behind a screen because he is afraid of Chris. And to the family's horror, he tells the jury a very different side to the story. He testifies that Karen was chasing him, and that it was creating problems in his marriage.
John was the boyfriend. He clearly featured in the case and was an important feature of it. As he had given material evidence of fact, necessary evidence of fact that we needed, we had to call him as a witness. He was a reluctant witness. He didn't want to come at all because Karen had gone, and I think at that stage he was possibly back with his former wife, and so the last place he wanted to be was giving evidence in this case in court. His reluctance was also marked by the fact that he insisted on giving evidence from behind a screen.
John's testimony comes as a major blow.
John said that Karen hounded him, wouldn't leave him alone, and when he tried to break it off, she said she was going to tell his wife.
No one knows whose version is true.
I think John's testaments changed purely because he still had a life, and he wanted that life with his wife.
All in all, not a good witness. Not a good witness, and a bit of a gift for the defense.
The jury is swayed by the defense's arguments. On May 9, 2003, Christopher Pugh is acquitted of murder and convicted of manslaughter by means of provocation. He is sentenced to 6 years behind bars. But because of time already served, will only have to spend 3.
So a surprising verdict. I think everyone was surprised. And the very nature of the violence that was used in the course of the event, we thought took it far beyond what one would normally have thought would have been a reasonable case of provocation.
In his sentencing remarks, the judge deemed the attack with the hammer as excusable, considering the circumstances, and that his wife had driven him to lose control.
He apologized to Chris for the hard time he'd had. When summed up, he said, you know, Mr. Pugh, he said, I know you've had a hard year, a very traumatic year, he said.
Chris said that Karen provoked him, and the judge said that it was provocation and that it was excusable. The 16 blows to the head was excusable because he was provoked. How can you have an excuse for hitting somebody, going to get the hammers and hitting somebody 16 times on the head? The evidence was there. Why? Why wasn't it murder? It wasn't a nasty accident that went wrong. It was murder.
Oh my God, I was devastated. I really was devastated. I can't think of another word for it. I really did break my heart. That's the time I cried. When he turned around, the judge, he was nearly in tears, talking to Chris, apologising.
Kathleen said she did have a little bit of happiness before she died with John. And that's the only consolation that we got, that she did have a little bit of happiness before she died with John.
I think I was gutted more for my nan and gramp because, like I said, for 23 years they'd had to watch her being beaten and mentally abused and couldn't really do much in that respect. And then having to bury her and then having to live with the fact that there was no justice. And that ate away at my nan and gramp badly.
After spending 3 years behind bars for killing his wife with 2 hammers, Chris Pugh is released from jail in 2006.
It just pickles me like that he came out, picked his old job back up, and just carried on working. Like he was in there for like a parking ticket or something, or, you know, non-payment of something trivial.
In the end, Karen's desire to keep her family together eventually tears it apart. Chris's children do not know which side to take.
The children no longer have a lot to do with one another. They don't really speak.
It's broke us up. It's broke a very, very close family up. I'll tell you what, she'd be with you 10 minutes and you'd love her. Everybody loved Karen. When she got buried, there was 250 people at her funeral. 250 people at her funeral. No, she was loved.